Hi, my name's Jill Galloway. I'm an artist educator with the National Portrait Gallery and a full-time artist with Jill Galloway Studio. In today's Drawn to Figures lesson, we're talking about how to draw an eye. We'll start with one simple eye first, and then we'll put them together on the head to show you where they belong, because there's nothing worse than making a beautiful eye in the wrong place. You don't need to have any experience for today's lesson. We'll start out very simple and add from there. Okay, let's get started. The supplies you'll need for today's lesson are a pencil, a paper, and an eraser. As always, I like to start with the simple shapes. The eyeball is just like it sounds. It's a ball or a circle. The iris lies right in the middle of that ball with the pupil centered in the iris. Here's a quick tip. When you're coloring in your iris, you want the lines to kind of go equally around the entire ball of the iris. So you'll make almost like crosshairs, a vertical line and a horizontal line, and then fill in the gaps in between. It's a way of keeping the angles of your lines straight. Now think about adding value to this ball or the sphere. So first we need to recognize where the light source is, and then think about how the light hits that ball. There'll be a light side and a dark side, so you'll need to shade it just like any other sphere. The eyeball rests inside the socket of the skull. The socket looks like a tilted rectangle or a rhomboid, and it angles down the face. The top of the socket is called the superciliary arch. It's a really thick bone that protects your eye, especially when a baseball's coming your way. The eyelids wrap up and over and around the eyes. I like to think about it like this when I'm drawing the lids. It's just like a washcloth laid over a ball. The cloth drapes up and over and around the ball. Notice how the upper lid rises more abruptly from the inner corner before it wraps over the ball. The upper lid folds over the top of the lower lid on the outside, and in most cases, the corner of the outside of the eye is higher than the corner on the inside. Now, eyelids have thickness because the edges have cartilage in them. The upper lid is thicker than the lower lid because it has thicker eyelashes. The thickness of the upper lid will cast a small shadow across the eyeball. When you close your eye, your lid covers the ball and keeps it wet. When you open your eye, the lid rolls back into your head. You can see how there's a crease here. There'll also be a shadow on the sides of the ball because it rolls back into the head under the lid. And then one of the last things you'll do when you're adding value and highlights to your eyeball is add a really bright white spot, usually across the iris or the pupil. It will be whiter than the white part of the eye because it's picking up the reflection of the light and it's wet. Let's talk about eyelashes. You first start with the one in the center and then go to either edge. The outside lashes curl up and inward towards the middle. Once you have the outside lashes added, you can start filling them in towards the middle, getting slowly straighter and straighter. Now note, because the lashes first sort of come towards you and then curl up, they'll be a little bit darker at the base, so there'll be a thickening of the lashes towards the lid, and then they'll get lighter and more feathery as they come up towards the top. The lower lashes are much smaller and much fainter. I sometimes barely put the lower lashes on at all. You'll want to take your eraser and then slowly start pulling out some of the lashes to lighten them up, to make them look as feathery as possible. Remember, the whole time you're shading and working on your values, there's a ball underneath of that lid, so it's pushing up and out, and so part of that ball on the lid shape will catch light. Something to note, when you're laying down your lids, you'll almost always lay them over the iris. It's very rare that you see someone's total iris. Think about it, generally you only see someone's entire iris when they've been surprised or shocked by something. Now let's talk about how you can make sure your eyes are lined up correctly. There's nothing worse than making a beautiful eye in the wrong place and having to take it off. Remember first that the eyeballs are in sockets, which is in the skull, which is made of bone, meaning they can only be in one place and they will always line up with each other. As your subject moves their head around, the eyes are always going to move with the skull. Start with the oval of the head and find halfway down. Add an eye line here. The eyes are halfway down the head. Next, add the brow line. I like to add 2 quick splotches of value at this point to kind of loosely locate where those eyes are going to go. In this way, you'll start placing your eyes within the skull shape. Now make a note, there's usually 1 eye space within 2 eyes, so that means 3 eyes across. You can either start erasing out the shape of the sphere with your eraser, or you can draw in the sphere and start erasing out the values. Now you can do some additional measuring before you go any further. Just measure from pupil to pupil and maybe the angles of each of the lids. If you're working on the entire portrait, remember the pupils tend to line up with the corners of the mouth. Now that you're sure your eyes are in the right place, you can go ahead and add as much detail as you would like. Just one more thing to think about. You can put down all kinds of really great detailed information for the eyes, but do you really have to? Sometimes what you leave out is just as beautiful as what you put in. For example, look at how I've just erased away portions of the lower lid. Like so much of portraiture and figure drawing, sometimes what you don't say can be just as beautiful than what you do say. Check out these Elaine de Kooning self-portrait eyes. Take a look at some examples of some of my favorite eyes from the sitters at the National Portrait Gallery. The more you practice drawing eyes, the better you'll get at it. You can always just use a mirror and practice with your own eye, or just make one up from your imagination. We would love to see what you came up with. If you wouldn't mind posting your drawings on social media with the hashtag MyMPG, then we can all check it out. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you next time.